No. So good morning.
So we have a special guest, Dr. Dinesh, joining us today.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us again today.
My
So
pleasure.
How are
Thank you
you
so
doing?
much.
How are you
Good.
doing?
Thank you so much. Very nice. Very nice. Good. Good. How are you?
All good, sir. All good. All following your guidance and suggestions how to safeguard yourself and keep at home. That is
Everyone
what
is
we.
trying to figure out. Everyone is trying to figure out what is the way out, what is the best way out. So keep
Yeah,
on educating each other. That's the best way.
that is the work. That's what we are doing. Sharing the best practices around the world and how we can unite the world together because the world is still not united, and that is what we are trying our best. Keep things simple and clear and easy understandable to everyone around the world, so that we can, we can fight this pandemic and we have a bright future. As you see, that environment is automatically rebooting himself. They don't need our dollars or our money to do that. They just need a lockdown, and they are doing everything on their own. I saw a rainbow yesterday in Delhi after ages.
I know.
So things are going on like I'm surprised. I mean, things are automatically in a reboot mode.
Somewhere
True.
over the rainbow, blue skies. You have blue skies and rainbow, right?
Yeah.
We are able to see Himalayas now. From
Yeah.
some cities in Punjab, we are able to see Himalayas.
So now
So that's
people
a good thing.
are to go. Nick's booking his trip. You know, something I noticed too, or people are still traveling in the U.S. I received a notice from someone who came from Florida to North Carolina, and
Wow,
I'm
really?
just, yeah, yeah,
That's surprising.
and
After
you
so
know
many,
what?
so you don't have any guidelines that who can fly and who cannot, or what's going on?
Apparently not, because this person wasn't a big official. It was just somebody like me. Now, actually, not even in the media, who probably needs to get down and do some interviewing and stuff. But no, nope. So yeah, so no guidelines, no whether it's an emergency, no, just and in fact, I think the president was pushing something that if you're from another country and you haven't left yet, there's some stupid thing going on about visas, and he's going to pull the
Yeah,
visas
yeah.
um, and I don't. I mean, why be rude at this point? Let's get them a place to stay and make them comfortable and be proud Americans and treating people respectfully. But we got to be pushy, bully, you know, rude people. I don't understand it. But anyway, doctor, you didn't come on here to listen to us complain about what's
Nice.
going on. What we need to do is talk about what we need to be doing to make things right, because we've got people who are saying, you know, this is a great show about bringing out awareness, but what's needed. And I'm hoping that you're going to shed some light on us about some good, positive power of thinking that we need to be doing.
Yeah, quite exactly. Because you see, it's almost become like a part of life now. I mean, it's been over a month here in India as well, and of course, the initial panic is not as much now as it was about 4 weeks ago. But then we don't know about the enemy as yet. I mean, we are more fearful because we have heard about some very bad things happening in other parts of the world, especially Italy and US and Spain. So we are very cautious. We are of course quite fearful. But so far, on an optimistic note, I would like to say that things have not been that bad so far in our country, at least. But we that doesn't mean that we can afford to be complacent. The coming few weeks can, of course, throw a challenge. So we are all geared up. We are in a slightly advantageous position because we are learning from other people's experience, other countries' experience. So we had the time to evolve our strategies and form some protocols, at least in the hospitals, to be able to fight the COVID-19 pandemic in a more prepared manner, I would say. But as I said, this is um, uh, little difficult time at the moment, because, as I said, we don't know which way we're heading.
No, I know. I mean, and even with the testing that, everybody thinks the testing is going to solve all of our problems, but I believe that it might bring us a false illusion of safety out there. I think we need to be a little more careful than just test and be carelessly going out. One of the things that Kumo has said is that when we do re-enter the world, we're going to have restrictions and limitations, such as wearing masks in big public. Even if we go to big public events and gatherings, that a mask will be required. And I loved his rudeness about this. Is like, and I don't care that you think you're not infected. You got to respect other people, and if you can't respect other people and want to protect them, then don't go out. Stay home.
Yes.
But we don't care about you people who don't care about other people. Don't go out when you're sick, and don't go out without a mask, because it's not about you. It's about the other people. And I'm like, whoa. And I get on people about wearing a chip, but he's right. We got to be very, very careful. Good morning, Dr. Moskowitz. Good morning.
Good morning to you all. Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. So we got two doctors here that, as I understand it, we're about work in the dialysis fields. And Moskowitz, you had brought up something the other day about being able to do things without having to have dialysis. And I would like to understand that a little bit more. A friend of mine is wanting to actually just took his father off dialysis. In some cases, and they did so because he was just making him sick. But sometimes that means, a death warrant as well. What is your advice to people like this?
Well, once they're on dialysis, I unfortunately have nothing that I can tell them, because nobody really knows how to get people off dialysis. By then, the kidneys are shrunken, and there just doesn't seem to be much hope, short of something miraculous like stem cells, which so far has been a con job, netting billions of dollars and zero in terms of clinical results. I think that we have a tremendous hubris when it comes to nature, and maybe the computer people, and I beg your pardon when I say this. The computer people have given us everything, but it essentially amounts to a better telephone. But there is we have no inkling of how complex nature is, how these systems feedback and either amplify or dampen each other. We have no idea about frequencies and oscillations, and I mean, it's just an incredibly well-tuned system, and we're not even listening to it yet. I mean, this COVID-19 virus is a perfect example of how little we understand about stuff we've been studying for hundreds of years. So I've now sort of wandered far away from your question, but it had to do with dialysis. Once somebody's on dialysis, it's too late, and unfortunately, half of diabetics get there. And I am one, so it's not purely an academic issue for me. But I think the trick is trying. The battle is won in the early stages, just as it is with this virus, and it's basically fought by primary care providers. And right now, primary care providers, any nephrologist will tell you that they get renal patients far too late, when their creatinines are far too high. And there's not a whole lot to do except, prepare them for a vascular access. What I think needs to happen is that primary care providers need to be lowering creatinine on their own. And I found that high dose quinapril does the trick. I'm currently working for a Hispanic healthcare plan where people in their 80s have stage 1 CKD. I mean, their EGFRs are 50% higher than mine, and I'm 70 basically. They're in their 90s and their GFR is in their 90s. I've never seen anything like this, and they're diabetic. So I'm humbled because I thought I would just go in and keep everybody off dialysis. Now I find out that there are patient populations that we know nothing about that are doing just fine. India is not one, and nor is China. And I think just like COVID-19 is going to be a big challenge for a huge country like India, there's no question that dialysis is going to be. And so for the moment, it looks like my protocol will be useful for a country like India, but I'm prepared to be proven wrong.
Wow, that's huge.
I think we should take Dr. Khullar's view on that as well.
Dr.
Because
Khullar, yeah, what is your view on that?
So I would quite agree with David on a few things there. But then before I answer that question, Kim, I would like to clarify for the viewers a few of the things related to the word dialysis. Well, you see, when we put someone on dialysis, what is important to understand whether it is a permanent kidney failure or a temporary one. Because so many times there's a confusion in people's mind when they would hear a story that, look, a person was put on dialysis and then he's been off it and for years he's off dialysis, or maybe forever the person is off dialysis. So that was something called acute kidney injury, and this was a temporary failure. What we are referring to here today is something called chronic kidney disease and advanced form. And I think all this discussion revolves around when we have a permanent kidney failure, and that too, the requirement, and there too, sorry, the requirement of dialysis doesn't happen overnight. Diabetes or most of the other chronic diseases give a person enough time, and it's a slow deterioration of kidney function. So let's say, for instance, the case of a diabetic. For years, at times, diabetic doesn't even come to know that he or she is a diabetic. And once they finally come to know, so very often they're not taking good care of their diabetes. Even if they are taking some kind of treatment, the control over diabetes is not optimal. And that is when the problems arise. So there again, it takes a number of years. And what Dr. Moskowitz was referring to are the stages of chronic kidney disease. Like we have chronic kidney disease stage 1 moving down to CKD stage 5. 1 being the almost like a normal looking kidney function, and CKD stage 5 is quite an advanced kidney failure, almost a stage of requiring dialysis. And this is when we start planning dialysis and actually implement it. Now, if the stage of deterioration has been gradual, 1 going on to 2 to 3 to 4 and finally 5, and which happens over a period of years, obviously it means that this is a point of no return, and a person once put on dialysis is going to remain on lifelong dialysis, or he or she can opt for kidney transplantation. Now, obviously, Dr. David is absolutely right, and that's the case in India as well. Most of the times, the patient reaches the nephrologist quite late. And once they reach, let's say in the stage 4 or stage 5, this, as we know, is already a fairly advanced stage. And on top of that, it is a progressive stage. Even if you pick it up, and in spite of the best of the known treatments, it doesn't get stopped. You can slow down the rate of progression, but you cannot stop it. And eventually, it will reach a stage of requiring dialysis or kidney transplantation. Now, if a developed country like the US or the various European countries are finding it difficult to cope up with the magnitude of the problem of people requiring dialysis, you can imagine what kind of perception we have of it in a developing country like India. So obviously, and this is what we had discussed last time as well, we would love to pick the diabetics early, control their diabetes quite well, so that they do not have a progressive disease, they do not reach the stage of dialysis if it is picked up early and tackled quite early in the course of the disease. But once the disease has progressed to a more advanced stage, it is actually going to involve a lot of expenditure, and obviously even the rich countries also are finding it extremely difficult to cope up with that kind of expenditure involved. So this is what we are concentrating on in our country. At least we are uh, trying to screen more and more population, spreading the awareness about diabetes, because diabetes, as we had talked last time as well, is the biggest challenge as far as people landing up in dialysis is concerned, even in our country. So this is where we stand, and I think there's nothing better than prevention.
So,
Right.
Dr. Khullar, we have seen some cases where people who are on dialysis they end up losing their diabetes as well. Is that the case? Really?
Yes,
What do
that's something interesting which happens.
Yeah.
Diabetes is the culprit, but once diabetes has caused advanced kidney failure, by virtue of the fact that patient has lost the kidney function, diabetes sort of disappears. Because what you need to understand is the kidneys were supposed to metabolize insulin and whole lot of oral diabetic drugs which this patient was taking. So the half life, the life of the insulin gets prolonged in the body, of the various drugs gets prolonged, and also to an extent kidney is also a seat of production of glucose. So everything gets affected, and whereby one may get a false sense of illusion that diabetes has got cured, while actually the real story is diabetes has got hidden. It's not a good thing for the patient, because if you say that someone who was quite careless about the control of diabetes has suddenly started having a very good control of diabetes, one of the reasons could be that kidneys have started failing. So what we want to hear is that the patient has become so compliant, he's been exercising regularly, he's taken good control over diet, and that is why diabetes has come under control. That is a good thing. But to the contrary, if we hear that the patient was as non-compliant, as careless as before, yet the diabetes is coming under control, one of the reasons could be, one of the important reasons and very common reasons could be occurrence of advanced stage of renal failure, and that's not a good news for the patient.
No, that's not. We have a question. Raj Kumar Jain is asking to Dr. Um, Kumar. Can you see the question, Ankit?
I think
In case of CRF,
depends
whether
on
dialysis can be
right
done through port of or fistula. Yeah, so I think what Mr. Jan is referring to is supposing a patient starts requiring dialysis, how we do it. Now, you see, everyone understands that dialysis is a process whereby you withdraw blood from the body, make it pass through a dialysis machine where it gets purified, and the same blood is returned back to the body. But obviously, one also understands the fact that by merely sitting in front of the dialysis machine, things are not going to get sorted out. So you have to be hooked onto the machine. Now, how do you do that? So obviously, there has to be a port, and that thing can either be a temporary access, which is what is called as vascular access. It could be a temporary one, whereby we put in a line, typically in the internal jugular vein in the neck area, and you can start dialysis right away. But the permanent sort of vascular access is AV fistula, arteriovenous fistula, whereby you combine over, typically over the wrist, you join the radial artery with the cephalic vein, and you actually arterialize the cephalic vein, whereby a lot of blood now flows into the vein. And now, if you insert two needles here, you can start the process of dialysis. You draw the blood from one needle, make it pass through the machine, and then the purified blood comes back into the body. Now, that is where the whole importance of planning comes into. If the patient was able to listen to the treating nephrologist, the advice that the dialysis is going to be required in the next few months, and it's better to go in for an AV fistula, the vascular excess is the best thing to do, because it takes anywhere between 6 weeks to up to 3 months for this thing to get mature over the arm. So if you had not planned your disease treatment well in time, so what is going to happen is one fine day you will be told, the patient will be told that you require dialysis now, and he or she is totally ill prepared for the same. And that is when we have to resort to the temporary access lines, the tunnel catheters, which is called a perm cath, and the dialysis can be started. So the process of dialysis remains the same. It is how you connect the human body to the dialysis machine can vary, and that's what the essence of this question is. I hope I've answered Mr. Jan's question.
So I need to understand a little bit, because we got two doctors from different parts of the world. Dr. Moskowitz, is it the same process and procedure in the United States? I mean, all of that is the same?
It's absolutely the same. When I listen to Dr. Khullar, who is an expert, I just shudder, basically, because my whole goal is to prevent people from getting to that point, and I think I can do it. So all you have to do, so people have heard about the horrors of getting large bore needles inserted 3 times a week into their arm, their fistula. And actually, most of the game of dialysis is keeping your access from getting clotted off or from ballooning out into giant aneurysms. And actually, dialysis didn't become possible until a guy from Seattle in the 50s developed a Teflon tube that would not clot off. I'm trying to Schilling or Schelling or something like that.
Scribner, are you trying to remember Dr. Scribner? Yeah.
Sorry.
So there's something very interesting about Dr. Scribner. Yeah. Anyway, I'll probably, if time permits, relate to that. Yeah.
Wow. So
this is early Alzheimer's for me. Anyway, what I want to do is prevent Alzheimer's, prevent dialysis. Now in the era of genomics, and I have to show my T-shirt. Let's see, there's whoops over here. Sorry, genomics, genomed. In the era of genomics, it's clear. It becomes clear what the genes are that cause disease, and you don't need all of them. You just need an early one. And we found 25 years ago, 26 years ago, that ACE overactivity was behind most diseases, actually, including mine, renal failure. And people have been using ACE inhibitors for a decade already. So armed with the genomic epidemiology information, we had the confidence to go up on the dose. And it turns out that high dose of a particular ACE inhibitor, quinapril, can actually lower creatinine. And even stage 5 patients now, I have evidence I can keep them off dialysis. There's a woman now going on 2 years who's in stage 5. So that's pretty good. I mean, 2 years is as long as people live on dialysis. So keeping them off is pretty good.
So some basic question for Dr. Khullar, that how long a person will stay on dialysis, and also how long the fistula will also carry the burden of the daily or maybe weekly thrice pin up on their hand and then do the dialysis.
Yeah, well, I think I'm sure when Dr. Moskowitz says that 2 years is all that these patients mostly live for, I know that he will testify to the fact that the long-term survival of the kidney patients or the dialysis patients has vastly improved. Now, let me tell you, we used to look upon countries like Japan